Hi there, Andre here from Peak Motorcycles. As you can see, it's a glorious day here in the Peak District. It's just coming up to the evening, and as it's such a lovely evening, I had an errand to do. I thought I'd take my CRF. So there's a few things I'm going to check out on this ride. So it's only going to be a very short video, but it's really just to get a feel for how the exhaust sounds when you're riding it with the baffle out. The second thing is to see just how much wind there is coming off the top of the windscreen, because I've got a little wing that I'd like to fit, and to do a comparison for that. It's also my first ride out since I replaced the levers, and then on the way back it should be dark, so I'll try the headlamp with my new headlamp guard on. So that's it. It'll be a very short video. I'll probably put this out as a Wednesday short. Hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, great evening to be out for a ride. I'm just leaving the Edale Valley now. So I've started up the engine, I've let it warm up a little bit. So I'll just talk you through the various modifications I've made and how it feels now that I'm riding on them. So first up is the exhaust. So it's still not loud compared to a lot of exhausts, but it's certainly louder than it was. I'm running the MotoX Exhaust with a titanium end can and a stainless steel header and link pipe. And it is definitely louder than it was. Whether it's too loud or not, I'll wait and see, but right now the fact that I can even notice it says to me that it probably is. So I think I'm going to run it with the baffle back in, because then it does bring it down to quieter than stock almost all the time. The point where I'm noticing it the most actually, and I'll get to do it on this next bit, oops, mind out doves, is above 5,000 RPM. I don't know if you can hear that, so I'm in 5th. I'm just going to drop it down to 4th for a moment. And it's probably that bit between maybe 5,000, 7,000 revs under heavy throttle. So here we go. So when I open that out, I don't know if you can hear that, but I certainly can. 4th, same in 5th, that's 6,000 revs up. And that's the bit where it seems to be louder. Now I know that's not part of the official static RPM test, but nevertheless, you know, if you're riding particularly the rally as an adventure bike where you're going to be doing 40, 50, 60 miles an hour on a paved road, then you know you probably are going to be using more of that bit of the rev range. And yeah, I think it is kind of loud. I know quite a few people have bought these exhausts. I know some people love it without the baffle in, but for me, my aim was always to try and keep it as quiet as possible. So to that end, the baffle will be going back in mine after this ride this evening. So the next thing I want to talk about is these short levers that I've put on. So depending on when you watch this, the video for the lever installation will either be done or it won't. But basically what I've done is I've bought a pair of cheap spring-loaded brake and clutch levers for a CRF300 off eBay. I think they came from China, as many of these things do. Build quality seemed to be good enough. The only thing is that the hole on the clutch side is too small. It's 7mm on the CRF300. It used to be 8mm for the 300. So I put those on. So the first thing is on the brake side, I don't really notice it. I've been mainly two-finger braking anyway, and the brake lever never pulled in that far for it to actually touch my other fingers. On the clutch side, it's yeah, I'm used to kind of grabbing the whole handle. The fact that it is now just two fingers ready to grab it is going to take some getting used to. On road, where you know I might be using my full hand anyway, or at least I have been so far, it's probably no big deal. But I'm certainly hoping that off-road, the fact I can now just pull the clutch in with two fingers, and the clutch is so light on the 300L and the 300 Rally that that's easy enough to do. So yeah, quite pleased with how those levers are working out. There's no play in them, even though they are spring-loaded so they can bend forwards without braking. They do seem to be quite well made, and there's certainly no unexpected play in them, which means that they don't work as well as they should. There we go. Just a very easy squeeze with a couple of fingers. So I just came through the village of Bamford, where there's a 30-mile-an-hour limit, and there's you know, houses that are fairly close to the road, so sound does reverberate around a little. And I found that actually I can really notice the exhaust. You know, even when pottering around at 30-mile-an-hour speeds, it is very noticeable. So yeah, if there's any doubt before, there definitely isn't now. So the baffle will be going back into my MotoX Exhaust for when I go out next time. You know, those of you that have got one, you might want to try it with it taken out, but for me personally, I think it's too loud. It might pass the noise tests, and it might not be as loud as some other bikes would be, but bear in mind the upper limits for those are all for like sort of race conditions, so it's not really comparable to being out for a day. Nevertheless, it was good to try it. It was good to see what it was like, but the answer for me is to take it out. I'm going to pick up this video later on when it's dark and I'm on my way home, because I just want to talk through how the headlamp cover seems to be working when covering the LED lamp, and also about the wind deflector at the top of the windscreen. So in the past I have really noticed the wind coming off the top. This evening, because it's so warm, I'm actually quite enjoying it, so it's not a great test. Later on this evening it should be a little bit cooler, and I think under those conditions I will be able to assess a little bit better whether or not I actually need a deflector. I certainly noticed it in the winter. I'm not really noticing it on this lovely summer's evening here in the Peak District. One other thing I'm using this test ride for is just to give you a first look at what the suspension's like on road. I know I've been out a few times, both on and off road, since I've had it done, but this road the surface isn't particularly good, and it is bobbing around quite a lot, so I think it is a useful description. So taking that as an example, the damping, now that I've replaced both the front and the rear suspension, means you literally get one bounce and then it settles. You know, it's just so much less rocky than it was before, and what it does mean is that, you know, even when going around this road with this uneven surface, with holes in it, with unusual cambers, it is just you know, it's a lot more peaceful to ride. I mean, the exhaust doesn't help with the peace, but from a handling perspective the bike just feels rock solid compared to how it was before. Now if you're a lighter rider this probably doesn't make as big a difference, but for someone who, like me, who is on the heavier side, then it certainly did. And actually just having the suspension done like this just means that riding on roads like this, where it's an uneven surface, even at speed, it really is a joy. And the bike just feels so much more planted. It's just much more, it just turns in more easily, and yeah, I feel much more in control than I did before. Even like that, coming off the throttle, before it would dive quite a lot, now it's just very, very settled indeed. And for those of you who know this area, so this is the back road from Mortimer Road near the Strines, heading over towards Bradfield on the west side of Sheffield. It's fun, isn't it? So the bit up through here, this is where it'll be a good test of the suspension. So doing about 50 miles an hour, it sailed over that first one and then just settled up over the second one. I've been in cars where I've nearly grounded out coming over that before, but yeah, that was just very, very easy. Yeah, that exhaust is definitely too loud. It's going to have to go quieter. I'm now heading back home, and this is the road that runs from the village of Hope to the village of Edale where I live. It's not quite dark yet, as you can see. The sky is still pretty bright, but I thought it'd be a good opportunity to try out the headlamp and see what it's like with the grille over it. I don't know if you can see from the road here, but there are still some shapes from the cutouts in it, but they certainly don't distract at all. So once I get round under this bridge, there's quite a dark section which will hopefully give you a good idea of just how bright this LED headlamp is. So this is still on the dipped beam, and you get this very sort of wide swathe that covers the road, which I think is pretty good. What I'll do is once I get to the dark bit, I'll flip it up onto full beam and you can see just how much light this thing puts out. So over here it's still pretty dark, but if I flip that onto full beam, that's what we get. And this is just the stock headlamp. This is the stock LED headlamp on the CRF300 Rally. So I think it does make quite a big difference compared to the older technology halogen headlamps. Hi, so I'm now back home. It's quite a fun ride back, even though it was dark. A few things I've learned on today's ride. So first of all, the headlamp guard is fine. The dipped beam and the full beam are still more than adequate to light the way ahead with the big LED headlamp that's on the CRF300 Rally. For my MotoX Exhaust, I think it's too loud even with the baffle out, so that will be going back in. I know I had measured it, and at 4,500 revs and even at the 1 second max test, it's still within acceptable levels for events, you know, by a long way. But for me personally, I still think it's too loud, so that baffle will be going back in. The suspension performed just great. I did find it was almost too warm this evening, to really be able to find out whether I need a wing on top of the screen or not. I was quite glad of the breeze because it's been so warm here in the UK. The levers worked really well. It's going to take a bit of getting used to on the clutch side because I'm used to grabbing the full lever and having to get my fingers out of the way, but I'm sure that will work its way through quickly enough. So yeah, everything's working really well. Looking forward to just getting out on the bike. I think I'm going to try and do some more riding videos over the next week or two. There's some more of the Trans-Euro trail that I'd like to cover off. I'm going away for a week, so there is going to be a bit of a gap, but after that I think I'll just be out riding it and actually taking the cameras with me on a few occasions. So yeah, I hope this has been interesting and useful. If it has, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. My visor is now completely peppered with insects.